Today's podcast on 10 important smart city technologies, a discussion with the experts, is a rebroadcast of a Smart City Digital Council meeting that was held on January 14th. Without further ado, let's get started with the conversation. Welcome, everyone, to another meeting of the Smart Cities Digital Transformation Council. I'm Jim Frazer, Vice President of Smart Cities here at ARC. And I'm joined by three of my esteemed colleagues today. Eduard Fidler, our Transportation Analyst, Rick Risch, who's our Energy Analyst, and Larry O'Brien, our Vice President of Cybersecurity. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you this morning?
Good. How are you doing this morning?
Morning. All right. Well, I believe, gentlemen, and for our viewers today, that you should be seeing the results of a poll we sent out about impactful technologies for smart cities. Eddie and Larry, you see my screen?
Yes, I do.
All right. So this is the results of a range. I think we had well over 20 technologies that we polled on two axes. One is the size of the impact, and on the x-axis, we have the rate of adoption. So we can just go through these sequentially. But first, number one, which exceeded all others, and it's in the upper left-hand corner, it's up in the upper right-hand corner for rate of adoption and impact, almost by itself, is lithium-ion battery evolution in terms of lower cost, weight, lower cost and weight. I think we just lost Rick, but that's certainly dramatic in a number of areas in terms of energy storage, as well as the lower weight needed for electric vehicles. Number two in our list, I'll do three of these, and then we'll go around the speakers today. Number two on the list is 5G. And 5G, according to our poll, has a rate of adoption in the middle. As we know, 5G is coming, but it's rated fairly highly, certainly above the 50% level in terms of impact. And number three, and we polled blockchain to create trust and secure city supply chains. And that one, the rate of adoption is quite low. It's certainly in the lower 40%. And its impact is thought to be in the, about the median, about a 50% level. Larry and Eddie, do you want to comment on any of these, in particular maybe the battery evolution?
Yeah, I'll take that as you might guess, Jim. So hey, folks, like Jim said, I'm a transport analyst here at ARC. I'm getting some echo back and forth, folks. I don't know if you have a mic and speaker next to each other, one of you two. If so, maybe try to mute. Okay. So yeah, like Jim said, I'm the transport analyst at ARC. So I'll comment on the lithium-ion battery piece here. So this is something that 10 years ago we could never have expected this kind of change in price, in energy density for lithium batteries. If you look back even 6 years ago, EVs were a bit of a pipe dream, right? They were very expensive, super practical. But that's what cell phones were like in the 90s, right? And so we've seen just in a few years an order of magnitude of price reduction and performance improvement for lithium batteries, to the point now where a regular consumer can buy a full range EV, like a Tesla Model 3, for the same price as the average new car in America when you consider the cost reductions for operating cost. And so we're seeing, millions of drivers upgrading. We're seeing commercial fleets, delivery, school buses, refuse trucks, you name it. And it's really taking off this year, last year, and in the next few. So that's revolutionary, and it makes sense that that's number one. Oh, Jim, I think you're muted.
Jim.
Thanks, Eddie. Yes, I was muted. I thought it might be me with the feedback. Larry, we just talked about 5G networks and also blockchain in numbers 2 and 3 in the technology we
Right.
You're very active in that cybersecurity community as well as in smart city platforms and networks. Can you talk a little bit about the impact of 5G and then the opportunities of blockchain?
Well, everybody's talking about 5G, as you know. And we believe, we actually just did a study on 5G. I wasn't the analyst that did that, but we have some pretty good research on how soon we expect 5G to be adopted, sort of en masse in industrial and critical infrastructure applications. So we are expecting 5G to really start to get rolling, the end of this year into next year, in terms of large scale rollouts. A lot of the stuff that's being deployed in critical infrastructure and manufacturing are privately hosted 5G networks. Obviously, 5G is going to be a big change in terms of, number of sensors that are going to be deployed in different smart city and critical infrastructure applications. So I think this is going to mean a ton more sensors out there, which will make it easier to deploy and hopefully reduce, the cost of installing these sensors. So it's a game changer in a lot of ways, but what concerns us is also cybersecurity, obviously. So 5G, the 5G spec has some security functions built into it, but these aren't sufficient cybersecurity provisions for something like a critical infrastructure or, any kind of an industrial or OT level application like you might find in a critical smart city application, right? So I think one of the things that's probably going to stall faster adoption of 5G is going to be implementation of these cybersecurity provisions. I think in a lot of cases, the vendors may be responsible for adding extra layers of cybersecurity in these privately hosted networks. And there's also some industry-wide initiatives that are calling for, better cybersecurity in 5G, especially for things, like Eddie, for automated vehicles and traffic management systems and things like that. I mean, a lot of this stuff is going to be deployed on 5G too. So these are really critical applications, and we need to take a couple more steps forward in terms of cybersecurity before these 5G deployments for these types of applications become, safe and have the proper, levels of cybersecurity. But it's coming, and it is going to start to come this year. And hopefully some of these cybersecurity initiatives that we've seen developing across industry and infrastructure will also move forward this year. So, we are expecting quite a bit of growth in 5G deployments. And obviously this is not on the consumer side, right? That's going to be a lot different. For blockchain, I've done a little bit of research on blockchain in the supply chain, in the food and beverage industry, in the pharmaceutical industry. So blockchain is basically a secure ledger technology, and that can be quite useful in applications like food and beverage, right, where you need absolute traceability of a food product back to the source. You want to preserve the chain of custody, for example, if you're distributing COVID-19 vaccines. So blockchain has a lot of promise in these types of applications.
Sure.
And I think also in cybersecurity. But I think, similar to 5G, it's probably going to be a little while before we see, large scale deployment of blockchain in these types of applications. Most of what I've seen so far is kind of, pilot projects and startup companies and things like that. But this obviously is a good technology for preserving that chain of custody, that can't be broken. And I'm sure there's probably lots of other applications too, like any emerging technology. Yeah.
Agreed. So we know 5G is on the near-term horizon. Blockchain's a little farther out, though its impacts could be quite dramatic. In fact,
it's here and people have been using it. Yeah.
It could be used, heck, for voting systems.
Yeah, we've talked about that. Yep.
Yeah, no, there are pilots for all of those things and more, and a lot of them have been used at relatively small scale, but for a long period of time. I mean, the first big blockchain application was Bitcoin for a store of value, and that's been 11 years. It's now worth $1 trillion, and it's never been compromised ever. And you have $1 trillion pot of money if you can compromise it, right? So we know blockchain has that utility, but now, to Larry's point, it has to be really implemented in each of these areas. So very exciting.
Great. Well, thanks, gentlemen. Let's move on to our next three subjects. Let's take them in groups of three. So number 4 is AI and machine learning advances, which is number 4. And that's fairly in the middle of rate of adoption and impact. We have transition to a lower carbon grid, number 5, which is also it's more impactful than its rate of adoption, but it's on the median of rate of adoption, and it's judged to be more than 50% impactful. And then we have edge and cloud computing, which also is clustered in the same place. So of those who were polled for this survey, all 3 of those tend to be right in the middle, meaning their rate of adoption is in the middle, as well as their impact. Certainly, edge and cloud computing, in my mind, is being adopted faster than the other scenarios here. We know that there's just a huge amount of edge devices that are out there. AI, machine learning, is certainly on near-term horizon. The transition to a lower carbon grid is certainly happening. There's no doubt about that, but it's may take a little while. Edward and Larry, you want to comment on any of those?
Sure. So edge and cloud computing. I mean, I cover smart city platforms for ERC, which are basically a single pane of glass or a system of systems that are designed to take information and data from these different siloed functions within a city and different systems and combine them into a single environment, so you can look at everything in a unified way with a common data model and common visualization, and then make intelligent decisions about what's happening across the city. So a lot of these smart city platforms, and I would say even industrial systems, are starting to move to edge and cloud-based environments. They are, in many cases, they're displacing traditional proprietary industrial or OT level systems right now. I think if you look at most of the smart city platforms that are available today, they are available in some kind of a cloud hosted fashion. So that is being adopted very rapidly. I think edge is going to really catch up a lot this year, edge-based systems. And the topic of edge and cloud computing and AI and machine learning are pretty closely linked, because as we bring the control function, closer to the edge, we can also put those analytics functions and advanced functions down at the edge as well. So that's been a big thing over the past year, is sort of driving AI and advanced applications down to the edge level, where they're very close to whatever it is that they're controlling. So you get basically faster and better analytics closer to the edge. So the two of those are pretty closely linked. We always say that one of the big benefits of a good smart city platform is the ability to plug in these advanced applications on top. for data analytics and machine learning and so forth. And we are starting to see a lot of growth in that area now. I think we also see growth in AI for cybersecurity. We have a lot of companies talking about deploying AI in their cybersecurity solutions. So I think it's kind of similar to 5G. Like this could be a big year for AI and machine learning, especially as it drives closer to the edge.
Agreed. And of course, there's a plethora of edge devices out there, from, facial recognition systems to license plate reading cameras, to mass spectrometers that sniff the air in critical areas. Our next three are, our number 7 is 1,000,000-volt high voltage DC transmission lines, low carbon cement for green construction, and LiDAR cost improvements for 3D imaging, AVs, and other applications. Well, 7 and 8, low carbon cement and 1,000,000-volt DC transmission lines, are the 2 lowest ranked options today in terms of rate of adoption as well as impact. Arguably, they will be impactful, but the rate of adoption for both of those is not in the very near term. I would like to focus though on number 9, which is above 50% in rate of adoption and is on about the 50% impact scale. LiDAR cost improvements are coming very quickly, and the cost is coming down substantially, particularly as the components all get integrated. So it's no longer is it a large number of discrete components all packaged together in one assemblage. Eddie, can you talk perhaps a little bit about the impact of LiDAR on your area of research, which is transportation?
Yeah, 100%. So you're spot on there, Jim. We're seeing the price curve drop dramatically, much like for lithium-ion batteries, like we talked about earlier. And so yeah, LiDAR it's key for autonomous vehicles. That's the crux of it, right? They mostly rely on LiDAR as well as standard cameras. And LiDAR used to be this giant spinning contraption on the top of the vehicle, which cost $80,000 or then $50,000. But now we're starting to use solid state LiDAR, and that's a much smaller device, and some of them cost a few hundred. Now that's not exactly the automotive grade; those might be a couple thousand, but that's an entire order of magnitude difference, right? So that's game changing. And so with that, we're already seeing AVs on the roads, right? For campus use, for small kind of fixed path use. And I think that's one of our topics coming up. So we'll talk more about that. But that's very important.
Yeah, I mean, LiDAR, very often, many of us simply think of LiDAR as being on an autonomous vehicle or a connected vehicle. But because of those cost points as they come down, other applications are opening up. In particular, one I'm fond of is, within buildings, particularly within an elevator. Cameras can only do so much, but LiDAR can give you a 3D map, and they can determine, hey, has a person fallen in the elevator or is incapacitated in the elevator, where a camera might not do that job as well.
Yeah, there's also, if I might add, there's also a privacy component where, just like you're saying, Jim, you could do 3D imaging. Maybe you could do that in a hospital room. Did an elderly patient fall down in the restroom? A camera would not be appropriate, obviously, but 3D LiDAR doesn't identify the person at all, and that could simply alert hospital staff to come over. So
very true. Our next 3 are engineered wood for green construction, fireproof engineered wood for green construction, autonomous vehicles on roads, and drone navigation and autonomy. So engineered wood for green construction is on the lower end of our rate of adoption in our poll today, as well as lower on the rate of impact. However, not surprisingly, autonomous vehicles on roads and drone navigation and autonomy are well up at the high end of the spectrum on both impact and rate of adoption. Eduard, I'll go back to you since you're a transportation analyst. Can you talk a little bit about autonomous vehicles, connected vehicles, and perhaps even a little bit of vehicle electrification?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those all happen to go together nowadays. There's a term called ACEs or CASE. So CASE is connected, autonomous, shared, electric. So to that end, we're seeing deployments of small scale autonomous vehicles on campuses. So on airport or a planned community doing a fixed route, shuttling folks back and forth with no driver. And to Jim's point, they're usually electric, and they almost always have a connected aspect to them as well, connecting to roadside infrastructure, to other vehicles in their own fleet, just to augment the onboard LiDAR and the camera and radar systems as well. So you have more eyes and eyes that can go through buildings, so to speak, with your connected vehicle. So, like a lot of things, we're seeing autonomy deployed in circumstances that aren't super glamorous. We were all talking about robot cars driving us around by 2020. That hasn't happened. That's much harder than we thought. But these smaller scale campus kind of utilitarian applications are happening right now. And that's a large market, and that's a lot of economic surplus to be created. So it's really interesting.
Very, very good. I'm impressed by not only the autonomous vehicle that assumedly carries persons, but our other item there is 12, drone navigation and autonomy. And while Rick had to drop off, I know he's focused on airborne vehicles, but we also have in the very near forefront. In fact, quite a few have been deployed. Are small pizza delivery, arguably drones, grocery delivery drones that are three-wheeled vehicles, and not far behind are autonomous aircraft. So that's a very near term.
Yeah, and I can comment on the engineered wood, and I'll throw in, I forgot to comment about the green transition from earlier. I missed that one, as well as the concrete. So the wood and concrete, yeah, we have that theme of applications that aren't very glamorous, but are actually pretty important. So concrete is incredibly carbon intensive. Carbon manufacturing emits, I think, 1 or 2% of all the world's CO2. That's just concrete.
Very heat intensive. I know that.
Yep. Yeah. So low carbon cement is a big deal, though it's, as we're saying, it's relatively slow for adoption. A little bit less obvious is engineered wood. And again, that's obviously a replacement for certain concrete and steel buildings. By default, you might think that wood is going to be flammable, but actually engineered wood, which is laminated hardwood into a special product, is as fireproof as standard concrete and steel buildings. And actually, you have an effect of, if there's a fire, it'll char the surface of the wood and make it temporarily fireproof, and people can leave. So it's actually no worse than concrete and steel, but it's far less carbon intensive. It's actually a carbon sink. And we know that you can build skyscrapers of dozens of stories of engineered wood, and it is being done. It's just at a slow scale or at a slow pace. And what's really fun there is that, if you have a 20-story skyscraper made of engineered wood, you've just sunk hundreds of tons of carbon into your building. It's a carbon sink. So all kinds of benefits there, and it's really exciting. About the broader green transition, just like with lithium ion price being reduced dramatically, the same thing has happened with solar and with wind. So we're at the point now where in a lot of geographies, depending on the sun and the wind and local energy prices, in many places, it's actually cheaper to install these completely clean technologies compared to coal, which is dying quickly, but also even to natural gas. So it's becoming pure economics in some places, and it's really exciting. It's moving quickly, and that's being complemented by the newly affordable lithium-ion batteries, because these resources are intermittent. So you need some energy storage to smooth over the gaps as well. So really exciting.
That's great. Thanks. Our next three are virtual reality and augmented reality advances, which is square in the middle of our chart, at a 50% confidence rate of adoption and 50% confidence rate for impact. We have robotic advancements is right alongside there at 50% on both those scales. And electric aviation, which is arguably quite a bit lower on rate of adoption and impact. Eddie, we've gone to you about transportation. We'll go to you again about electric aviation in the absence of Rick today. But can you talk a little
Who wants to fly in an electric plane?
Yeah, I can take that for sure. So of all these technologies, that is, I think, close to the earliest stage of adoption. But what we're seeing is small electric, two-seater prop planes are already being used for training. So when you train pilots, right? And those training schools are saving massive amounts of money on fuel and maintenance. So that's the use case right now. It's small range, low speed. But what is being developed, I know that Airbus is doing this. A lot of companies are doing this. There's actually hybrid planes, just like you have a hybrid light duty vehicle on the road. It'll have an electric component, which simply complements the fossil fuel powered component to let it run optimally, and you'll have both running together. So that's really where the adoption will come in the near future, and that can be medium scale with passengers as well. So not all the way electric, but part way, and that's pretty cool.
Well, thanks, Eddie. Hey, our next three before our last four before we open it up to just.
Do we want to talk about augmented reality and VR?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, because I've most of my experience in this is in the industrial sector, but they are using augmented reality and technologies like Microsoft HoloLens to assist technicians and maintenance people on the ground to do maintenance tasks. So if I work in an intelligent building and I have to go perform repairs on a motor or something like that, I could theoretically wear a HoloLens, and it could guide me through the process of making any necessary repairs or changes or what have you. So I think there's a lot of promise there in terms of using augmented reality for things like maintenance tasks or kind of on the ground, technician and then those types of tasks. And virtual reality, I know there's a lot of growth in, very advanced forms of 3D simulation, also being used for training, or, if you want to run kind of what-if scenarios. So that's been taken off actually for a while now in the industrial sector, and I think we're going to start to see an uptick in adoption of this technology in the smart cities sector as well. And it's already kind of a mature technology in terms of, it's been used in simulation for many years now. And I know a lot of the suppliers have been working on augmented reality based solutions for things like maintenance and, plant floor. Well, in this case, it would be, out in the built environment or, in a water treatment facility, for example, or a power distribution center. We talk about smart cities, but a lot of these applications that exist within smart cities, like power transmission and distribution and water, wastewater treatment and so forth, are pretty firmly, on the industrial side and are served by industrial suppliers. So I think this technology is going to come from that sector and gradually get adopted in other sectors like building automation and so forth.
Indeed. Thanks, Larry. Our last four are cybersecurity, smart city platforms, pandemic management systems, and GIS. Interestingly, let me do these out of order. Pandemic management solutions, the rate of adoption is quite high, but the impact is less than, it's below the 50% line. GIS similarly has a large rate of adoption, an even larger rate of adoption than pandemic management systems, but its impact is only slightly higher than that of pandemic management systems. However, cybersecurity and smart city platforms, number 16 and 17, both have among the highest impact in terms of deployment, and their rate of adoption is still relatively low in our poll. Larry, I understand you've done quite a bit of work in cybersecurity and smart city platforms.
Yeah.
Can you comment on both of those?
Yeah, so smart city platforms are kind of a nascent market, right? Up until now, most big cities, at least in the US, it's a little bit different, I think, when you look overseas, but a lot of the focus has been on deploying these kind of siloed systems for specific applications. A lot of the cities don't yet see the value in having a holistic view of all the city's operations on a single pane of glass. And and a lot of what we've been doing at ARC is trying to sort of evangelize that value, because there is a lot of value there in terms of keeping the city resilient, avoiding unplanned interruptions in services or operations, because what happens in one city system affects what happens in another city system a lot of times, right? So if you have an interruption in the power, for example, in power transmission and distribution, that's going to affect a lot of critical services. If you're in the middle of an extreme weather event like a hurricane, right, that's obviously going to put a lot of stress on your stormwater management systems and things like that, which is going to have an effect on your traffic management systems. It's going to have an effect on emergency response systems. So systems within a city don't operate within a vacuum. What happens in that system will have an impact on what happens in other systems. And I think a lot of cities and communities don't really understand that interrelationship. And what a smart city platform does is give you that, unified, holistic view of everything that's going on and how it might affect other things that are happening in the city as well.
Arguably, Larry, the smart city platform really is the foundation for almost all of these that I see here. It also underpins not only these technologies, but also sustainability, resilience.
Yeah.
And it really is a foundation and a facilitator of interoperability and, de-silo
Absolutely
all these different, applications and departments that frankly today don't speak to each other.
Right. And we have so in addition to siloed systems, we have siloed organizations, we have kind of siloed mentalities. This department doesn't want to talk to the other department. And in a lot of cases, they're direct competitors for city budget money and things like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is a cultural
They're protecting
issue.
their turf.
Yeah, a lot of it's a cultural issue. We kind of have to break down these silos if you want cities to perform better. And I think the one thing that's really brought this out is COVID-19, because a lot of cities have found that, if we want to manage this pandemic, we have to consolidate data from a bunch of different sources, right? We have emergency response data, we have publicly available, like CDC data, we have local level kind of Department of Health data and data from hospitals. And so all these different data sources have to be combined if you want to get a real view of what's happening with the pandemic. And what we've seen is a lot of end users have actually invested in smart city platforms, and they've increased their digital transformation efforts a lot of it has to do with, we got to manage this pandemic. We need a way to get all this different data from these different sources and put it together and try and make some kind of sense out of it, so we can mount a better response to this pandemic. So in some ways, that's accelerated digital transformation and adoption of these platforms.
Well, it's important, Larry, you bring up digital transformation, and there really are three pillars to digital transformation. And the first is the technologies, as we've discussed here today. The second pillar is the user's business, modifying your business processes to take advantage of all these new tools.
Mm-hmm.
The third is probably the most difficult. It's getting your culture aligned with those new processes and that new technology. And that takes an awful lot of retraining. These technologies don't just work themselves. A human needs to be on the other end of the wire in most cases.
And that's why we look at that triad of people, processes, and technology. So you can buy a new technology, but if you don't train your people and you don't put in the proper work processes to use that technology, you won't get the benefit out of that technology. And one thing that's interesting about smart city platforms is that it makes it a lot easier to implement these kind of standard operating procedures and standard workflows across the organization. So that actually, they will actually make things easier from that perspective. But yeah, like you said, you still have to train the people.
Agreed. Well, we've been at it for over half an hour, and we've reviewed a number of technologies here. This is ARC's research into the top technologies for smart cities. And very shortly, we'll be having a release about the top 10 technologies, which will be drawn from this list and some other research that we have conducted. So anyone on this call will be receiving that information very shortly. I'd like to thank Eddie and Larry today. Are there any closing comments you'd like to make about the top technologies for smart cities, and maybe you want to comment on smart city evolution in general?
Well, I would say if you want to learn more about a lot of these topics, attend our forum, right? We have some pretty deep dive presentations on smart city platforms and cybersecurity in smart cities, which is something we didn't get much into here today, but it's a very important topic, especially given the news with the SolarWinds hack and things like that. These things affect the OT level, and not just in power plants, right? It's also a big threat to the built environment. Pretty much any smart city system. So, I would recommend, I think we have some information about forum sign up on the DTC site, right, Jim?
We do. Remember, Larry, this is a Smart City DTC monthly meeting.
Yep.
So let me repeat that offer from ARC Advisory Group. ARC Advisory Group does have 4 annual forums. They had been face-to-face around the world. This year, of course, they're virtual. Our Orlando forum is typically in excess of 1,000 people, senior executives, directors, vice presidents, and above. This year it is virtual, and it's spread out over 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of February. In the second week, on February 16th and 17th, we are holding a Smart City Forum of 4 90-minute sessions per day on a range of smart city topics. And if you are a member, if you become a member of our free Smart City Digital Transformation Council, you are eligible for a free ticket, not only to our Smart City Forum, but to our industry forum the preceding week that has 3 days of 4 parallel tracks of technology sessions. So feel free, if you are an end user of technology and you would like to join us for the Smart City Forum, feel free to reach out to Edward, Larry, myself, or find us on social media. The sign-up form is available there. You can also find it on arcweb.com. Simply select the Digital Transformation Council option and the tracks and the sessions that you'd like to attend, and we'll get you registered. So thanks, Larry, for that reminder.
No problem.
Yep. So
it's all I'm working on these days. So.
So we we urge you to invite, we do these typically every month, sometimes bi-weekly. We do have another Smart City Digital Transformation Council meeting in 2 weeks. It'll be on the subject of applying the IEEE Smart City Planning Standard, meaning how to define your user needs, who's a stakeholder, and how do you create an actionable list of measurable functional requirements. So we'll be having that in 2 weeks. And then we will have our forum. So feel free to invite your end user colleagues to these meetings, and hopefully we'll see you at our Smart City Forum on February 16th and 17th. Thanks, Eddie, Larry, and thanks, Rick. And we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you. See you next time.
Take care.